And good evening and welcome to your view with me on Tabane. We're coming to you live from Linden here in Johannesburg. You know, I had a very interesting day today and a conversation on SAFM with Pimelo Mutine and Rems Mabote and Tessa Dooms about how do we position South Africa abroad given all the chaos, man, that is going on in our country. And of course, the conversation got to the big question, what needs to be done? And I think there was consensus that the revival of activism is simply at the center of the solutions that we need to explore. That we cannot expect government to do everything because, after all, they have failed. But yes, they failed us anyway. And then, of course, other people say, yeah, they've done their best. And well, their best was good enough. If their best was good enough, civil society wouldn't need to exist. Businesses wouldn't need to do anything. But exactly because their best is not good enough, we as civil society must stand up. You must stand up because when you don't stand up, the funny thing is the same government can actually blame you for things that are going wrong and say, yeah, but you refused the social compact, I was told, my executive producer said I mustn't mention this, but I'm too tempted to mention it. So yesterday, in the news bulletin, there is a reporter, Wamututu. So now they ask this chap, who's the administrator. So what's the problem? He says, no, the fact that there are people who have sewage that's spilling into their houses is the fault of the community. Because they vandalized a sewage treatment plant. So it's their fault. I'm besides myself. But okay, anyway, we'll not belabor that. Next week, Monday, we're going to host a dialogue about Madibeng. And we'll have a studio audience from people from Madibeng. We'll have councillors. We'll have hopefully the administrator or the mayor, if that mayor still exists at all, to come and use Madibeng as an example of how not to do things or maybe how to do them, depending on from which vintage point you stand. But from where I stand, civil society must ensure that governments are held to account. Now, after 1994, there was very little civil society. Yesterday we talked about the church, but the civil society was obviously broader. We've got what we call CBOs, community-based organizations, NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and others in between. And you know, in the 80s, you used to have Sanko, when Sanko still existed in a serious way. These days, we don't know whether they are fish or they are fowl. Sanko used to be a serious civil society organization. The stuff that's happening in Madibeng, where people are supposed to vacate their houses because sewage is spilling in, would not have happened under the watch of Sanko in the 80s. Never. The place would have come to a standstill. These things you see in Soweto, people are boycotting Asinamali. That's nothing compared to what Sanko, as a civil society leader, used to do in the 70s, in the 80s. They would bring the place to a standstill to make sure that what the society or the community needed happens. Anyway, no news crying over spilled milk. Sanko is just basically just a pussycat instead of a lion for the people. Sanko. Completely captured by the ends in the pockets of the movement, in the pockets of government. You see, if you want to kill civil society, put it in the pocket of government. And unfortunately, the drying up of funds for non-governmental organizations after 1994 ensured that civil society now is dependent on government. The Department of Social Development will fund you. Do you think that if you criticize Minister Zulu and her people, you'll get funding? They'll find every excuse in the book. I'm told that even in the big campaign that is launched by government on gender-based violence, right? The people there who are supposed to lord over those funds, that 1 billion, right, will already say, yeah, we want NGOs that have 3 years of existence. Basically, they're saying they want white NGOs. Because NGOs that are starting from the ground up and so on will not have 3 year, 4 years financials. And nobody's saying people mustn't account. But when you start off by saying only the privileged people who run NGOs from the back of their garages with a fax. I don't know whether a fax machine still works. A fax and a cell phone these days. And they have beautiful financials. They hire accountants to write them. And then they go and those people get funded time and time again ensuring that government has these NGOs in their pockets. Cannot happen. It cannot happen. We need NGOs that are not in the government, in the pockets of government. And this by no means that they shouldn't collaborate with government. NGOs must indeed collaborate with government. That's the whole point. The point is we've got an inadequate government. Because it can't get to every citizen. There are 55% of people living in poverty after 25 years of being in charge. That tells you plenty. It means that to deal with that level of poverty, to deal with the embarrassing inequality, any politician by was the highest unequal society or the most unequal society in the world. It's a scandal. It's a scandal. It's like going back to being the skunk of the world. But this time, as far as economy is concerned, it used to be about the politics, about the crime against humanity and all. Now it's about the economics of it. Our economics are a skunk of the whole world. And it's clear, therefore, that you must ask yourself the question, what am I going to do to join a civic society group in my area, to join a community-based organization, and target an area that is important for my community, to make sure that government can do what the Constitution enjoins them to do. And it's not theory. It's not theory. You know, one of the things that we must accept has failed in this country is what one can call political diversification. That thing has failed. It started with PAC. PAC, I'm sure, cite one or two perico parliament day. An organization with such a rich history has failed to appeal to a small percentage, enough for them to get proper seats in parliament. But let's all one day there's a PAC president of this sort, next minute, what's finally Sanko? Sanko says 2 presidents. All they are concerned about is power. Who's the big boss? Who's the big chief? PAC, it's totally embarrassing what has happened to the PAC. Bad. Bad. Right? But I'm making that to give you a demonstration. UDM, down to 2 seats. COPE, I don't know what I have, 1.5 seats or what it is. Right? EFF, with all this drama and appeal, only 10%. Far from governance, far. Unless they concoct some coalition. So it's clear that that's not the route that is going to change our lives. It has failed since 1960. PAC, then UDM. UDM was so bright a future. With black and white, saying, oh, this is going to be a diverse party. DA failed. The people there who wanted to convince us that this is going to be a most diverse party failed, falling apart. Now every Tom, Dick and Harry want to be their leader. Now they are busy. It's a rat race. Therefore, civil society is our only hope to change things in this country. Let me give you an example of something that was more effective than all these political parties combined together. You would remember the scandal of AIDS denialism, which we would rather not remember. AIDS denialism, why was taken back? I was not taken back. 300 people died because people were dithering about whether or not to give people treatment. And come with all sorts of, crockery and things, beetroot solutions, you name it. And then all sorts of conspiracies about pharmaceutical companies wanting to sell drugs and just dump drugs here. All sorts of scientific gobbledygook. People were dying like flies. It took not opposition parties who were in parliament enjoying, their time there, in the opposition benches. It took the Treatment Action Campaign, an NGO that said, not in our name. They went to court and forced government. Government is like HIV/AIDS with the biggest ARV role. Parliament, they were refusing with that treatment. It took not a municipality, not a province, not the MEC of health, not the Minister of Health. It took Treatment Action Campaign. To go to court and say to them, not in our name. With the biggest, if you want to kill a law, to have a biggest infection rate of HIV in the whole world. I get along with the biggest ARV treatment. We're rolling it out. By the way, there are 2,000 infections a week. To tell you, we have lost the plot of how to fight this thing. We thought ARV defeated. Hey, what a relief. Let's get on to another subject matter. Civil society can do what the TAC has done. Replicate Section 27. It took Section 27 to say to the Department of Health, you will pay Mike Komape's family. No. It's too much. We don't want to set a precedent. You must set a precedent. Because if you don't set a precedent, it means you will think it's all right for children to go to schools that don't have toilets. It didn't take MINMEC. There's a big thing called MINMEC. Ask somebody next to you, MINMEC, Minister MECs. I don't know, education, they have a fancy name for it. Education Council. Why didn't that council say to the minister, pay the family man of these people whose son died in a latrine? No, they have to go to court and appeal. They can appeal until the cows come home. They are not paying for that. But it took Section 27. Not government, not COPE or EFF or whoever. Section 27 fought until the bitter end. Mudluli, a crook in the police station. Yes, of being on some suspension, buying girlfriends, Mercedes-Benzes, just criminal conduct. It took freedom under law to say, you stop your nonsense, we want that person to be prosecuted. And so it goes. And my heart just bleeds that we don't have something that is akin to AfriForum. That you can hate them all you want. They have identified that if you touch the Afrikaners, who are going to come after you. Don't forget about the cosmetic cases of black person here, black person. The reality is those guys are fighting as civil society for their constituency. Who's going to fight for black people? Who's going to take Madiben to court because the sewage is spilling in Mututlu? Who's going to take the municipality that we mentioned here that owns 700 million rand to court and say to them, you are going to fix it? Civil society, you are on your own, South Africa. If you don't organize and reflect and follow on the footsteps of the likes of TAC, the likes of freedom under law, the likes of civil society organizations that has proved that have a track record of taking on the rights, what we call the second generation rights that are provided for by this constitution. Black men, you are on your own. It's time we stop complaining and do something. Do something for our very selves. Because those we put in place. By the way, one of the callers on the radio program this afternoon says, you got the leaders you deserve. You are coming there, you're complaining that private sector this, private sector that. You got the leaders that you deserve. Because those leaders are fat and bloated, while three black miners are stuck underground for 4 years, and they have not raised the flag, they have not raised alarm. It doesn't matter. They'll tell you, there was a report, that said this on this. But those 3 black people are stuck at the bottom of a mine, and 100 others are protesting at the bottom of a mine in Sibanye, I'm told. Does anybody declare an emergency? Black men, you are on your own. Let's take a break.